Okay, you can take a break at that point if you wish to. So then we go on to session 8. Okay, this is session 8. This is where we're going to be doing some appreciative inquiry activity. There's a fair amount of material here about appreciative inquiry, and then an introduction into the results scoring activity, or at least the dimensions of results would be the let's see concept, the LETCI concepts. So basically, it would be the entry into going through the same 7 steps that we had in the process items. We're going to get people started on that same thought process for the results item by the end of the day. Okay, appreciative inquiry. Simply enough, what we're trying to do here is that we would like to have the assessors be able to communicate in ways to the applicants that make them feel much more willing to take on the advice and observations of the assessors. The way in which you communicate can make a lot of difference in people's openness, and so appreciative inquiry is part of that. Looking for the good things that already exist, helping people to understand that you're asking them to build upon the good things they know how to do, and then using a positive tone so that people can harness their enthusiasm that comes from their past successes and use that to be able to move for future successes as well. Again, a fairly brief definition of appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry as a technique is one that people could spend 2 days in a class on this. So this is really just a very brief overview of it. We're using the term appreciative inquiry because it's kind of a technical term that people can go and find more information about. But you can present it and talk about it in any way you wish to. It's really more about looking for the positive and trying to be fairly upbeat. Part of the reason that we're trying to get the students to look at it this way is that there's a tendency for people who will get into the auditing mode to be quite negative, to be looking for the non-compliances. We hear from companies a lot that they get certain assessors who come in who are doing nothing but searching for OFIs, and we don't want that. We want to have people who are looking for both the positive aspects of the company and looking for those areas where the company can move forward even further. And so this is part of that, helping people to adjust their behavior so that they are presenting themselves in the best way possible in their interactions with the company. That's one of the reasons why this kind of falls into that little discussion that we had about site visit issues, is that this is preparing people for the way in which they interact during the site visit. So we give a film that can kind of give them the overview of appreciative inquiry, understand what that is, and then we tell about how those concepts can be used within the TBEM assessment activity. Do read through these materials before you try to teach them. Hopefully you're doing that for everything. And as I say, it's a fairly complex area to go into, but there's fairly simple things behind it. In this particular case, this slide is to emphasize that during any particular site visit, you do not just see good things or bad things, and even the things you see have mixtures of both of those. So this is briefly going through saying it's neither excellent all the time, nor is it good all the time, nor is it bad all the time. What you actually will see when you're out there is a mix of excellent, good, and bad. And so you will need to be able to operate in a way that can talk about a particular area that has all 3 aspects in it. And part of what we want with appreciative inquiry is to ensure that you do not ignore the excellent and the good parts and spend too much time on the bad part. There is a psychological background that says that if people interact with someone who's negative all the time, basically they'll just stop wanting to have that interaction at all. And so you'll lose your audience fairly quickly if you're doing negativity all the time. So that's kind of what this thing is. It's how what you've written down, as along with the tone in which you presented, says how likely is it the company that's going to be able to both accept. When we say acceptance of feedback, we mean use it for something. So the whole purpose of the TBEM process is to be useful. It's to help companies move forward on their results. And if the input you guys are giving and your team is giving and the students are giving is not something that the companies will actually be able to act upon or want to act upon, then you're not really getting the job done. We find that if the assessor's words are negative in tone, but they express it kind of nicely, like then and the company doesn't know what to think about that. They're not sure. He's like, you have a positive attitude, but you're telling them bad things, and they don't understand whether you're sincere or not. If you have positive words, but you're saying it in a negative way, so if you say, then that just makes people not feel well. This is giving. It's not that it's false praise. It gives the impression that you, as the assessor, don't believe the words you're saying. So you don't want to do that. What you want to do is you want to be positive in the tone you use, both in your presentation activity, the way in which you talk to people, and the words you're choosing to either have written down or said. So here's just an example of positive sounding words that you can feed into the way in which you do the process here. Again, this is a fill in the blanks activity, and you would expect to have your students go through and call out, how did the company something, this something, and look through that list of positive words. Part of what this does is it makes so the students are reinforcing in their own mind that list on the right-hand side. So you want to give them enough time to read that list, to think about it, before we start pulling pieces of it off and putting them into the blanks. So, again, give them a minute or two to have gone through that list and then say, okay, now what do we think here? In fact, you might even ask them at their table to think about the connections there. So in this case, once you start hitting the mouse button or the clicks, you'll start bringing the words one at a time into the spaces here. And okay, so that works over there. And then overall appreciative inquiry. Again, we're going to, we have the material here that you can go through. Because there is a fair amount of talking at material here, do make sure you've given yourself enough time to touch the appreciative inquiry area. Again, we're in the session that's probably going to be towards the very end of day 2. If you've fallen behind in the past, there might be a tendency to try to rush through this. Do try to have given yourself enough time to have spent the time necessary for people to have understood and had some conversation about the positive tone they should use in their TBEM assessments. And so in this case, it's just a kind of a slide that says that the tone you have could help you work well with the company, or it can make it so that you and the company and the people at the company are in an adversarial relationship. We'd like you to make it so that we are working with the company. The intention of TBEM is to be a collaborative process. We're here, the students are going to be there with the company to be working together, not as an audit. So we want to do everything we can with the words to keep ourselves from moving into an adversarial relationship. But on the other hand, you also do want to make sure that you are giving the feedback. You're saying, here's what I'm observing. You make sure that people understand, what your qualification is to be able to make the observation. In other words, you do so respectfully. But you're, at the end of the day, what the TBEM process provides is feedback. So in this case, there is the 5-step model for feedback, and the first part is to make it so that it's to gain permission to actually give the feedback. If someone's not looking for it, doesn't want it, then you can create a very negative impression by giving unwanted feedback as well. And then when you do the feedback, keeping in mind the idea of appreciative inquiry, make sure that you're always saying the good stuff that you're seeing as well as areas that you might see for improvement. When you're saying, here's something that I think, may have an opportunity for improvement, make sure that you're talking about how, the impact of what you're seeing, in the current state. You're saying that this behavior, what you're seeing, seems to be having a particular kind of result. And so you can talk about things not just saying change of behavior, but with the idea of potential changes may have changes in the potential results as well. And then pause. You can talk to people and say, what do you think on that? And we do want to have a certain amount of this conversation during the TBEM visit. But definitely when you get to the feedback sessions with the company, you're going to see an awful lot of this kind of use of the 5-step model for feedback. And where you can, suggest concrete steps. Now, you don't want to be prescriptive, but you don't want to withhold your opinion either. So you may make certain amounts of suggestions, but do so, again, making it so that people are aware that you're not dictating of what they should do in any particular area.